everyone, thanks for coming. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So before CDOT was around, there were many ways that people dealt with snow on their roads. And prior to the automobile and mechanized plows, snow removal was largely focused in cities and more populated areas rather than on highways or the connections between cities. Roads were cleared with horse-drawn plows, with shovel brigades, or they just weren't cleared at all. And shovel brigades, as you can imagine, consisted of just large numbers of people coming together to shovel an entire street or an entire block, and the snow would be hauled away in a wagon. And patents for the horse-drawn snowplows were first issued in the 1840s, and the first recorded use of snowplow is around 1862 in Milwaukee. And unlike modern mechanized plows, horse-drawn plows couldn't actually push the snow out of the way. Rather, they would drag the plow behind them, and it would scrape the snow, which would create a surface that sleds and sleighs could glide upon. But the advent of the railroad saw new changes and developments in snow removal. Trains would be equipped with a plow on the front that would remove the snow from the tracks as the train traveled. But this wasn't very reliable all the time. One story tells of a train that was stuck in a snowdrift on Boreas Pass, and not a lot of effort was given to get the train out until the whiskey at the Gold Pan Saloon started to run low, and then it turned into a full-blown crisis. But the invention of the automobile really changed everything. As cars grew in popularity in the early 1900s, drivers expected not only more roads, but better quality roads, and public safety really necessitated it. So to this end, there were movements such as the Good Roads movement, which was established in the late 1800s and really grew in popularity in the early 1900s. And this had the goal of improving the country's road system. And it had support from industry groups such as the American Automobile Association, AAA, which was formed in 1902. And towns and cities, especially those in rural areas, really came to understand that having these easily navigable roads was essential to Colorado's economy. Residents of communities could get regular delivery of goods and services such as the mail, and industries such as mining could transport their raw materials and their goods when the roads were better. And additionally, automobile touring became a really popular pastime, especially in the scenic mountains of Colorado. Motorists would take to the roads for a leisurely day drive, or they would embark on longer expeditions and reside at tourist camps along the way. Added to this was the rise of named transcontinental highways such as the Victory Highway or US 40 and the Pikes Peak Ocean-to-Ocean Highway, and these further promoted automobile tourism and the need for improved roads. So with this rise in travel on Colorado's roads came the need for an agency dedicated to maintaining and constructing these roads. So in 1910, the Colorado Highway Commission was formed with 3 men who were charged with improving Colorado's transportation network, and it was later named the Colorado Department of Highways and now the Department of Transportation. So the Highway Department grew pretty slowly in the early 19-teens, and in 1916, the first Federal Highway Act was passed, and this made available matching funds for highway construction and road improvement projects. And the department really set to work assessing their existing road systems, surveying and constructing new routes, and they focused a lot on the major mountain passes, such as Monarch Pass that you can see in the upper left photo, and Red Mountain Pass, and many others. And when people discovered that they could travel to the mountains in the winter for recreation, this put even more pressure on the department to provide better roads at all times of the year. But this was easier said than done. At this time, most of Colorado's roads, they were dirt wagon roads or stage routes. There were no really major highways, and even the improved roads at the time were still rough surfaced gravel or dirt. These were quickly damaged, as you can see, by large amounts of snow and vehicles and all sorts of different things. So because of this, the department, they didn't really have a way to clear the roads yet, so they just recommended that county commissioners and road overseers drag their gravel and dirt roads, and if they did this before the first freeze, this would ensure a smoother surface over the winter. And if they did it again after the frost was gone, it would help the road dry out easier and assure a better surface in the spring. But winter road maintenance was really not a top priority for the nascent highway department. And in some areas, it was just non-existent. Much of the western mountainous area of the state was pretty much cut off from the Front Range throughout the winter, and it was often inaccessible until July. In general, at elevations above 8,000 feet, mountain passes were closed from 3 to 5 months out of the year, and they were only passable by sled, or for the hardy people in the high country, skis and snowshoes were the most dependable way to get around. But this did really begin to change in the 1920s as the department made winter maintenance more a part of its regular road maintenance. In June of 1922, the department reported on the various mountain passes across the state that had opened to traffic. And these included Tennessee, Raton, and Levita passes, all of which had opened in May. Monarch Pass opened later on June 10th, and even after that, Berthoud, Hoosier, and Rabbit Ears passes all opened. So to keep the mountain passes open, the maintenance crews, they really had to look to clear the roads in the most economical and the most efficient means possible. And they were also, as I said, trying to protect the gravel roads. So they used several passive methods of snow removal, and this could include snow sheds. The first one was constructed as early as September of 1925 at the Busk-Ivanhoe Tunnel. Snow fences were also used, and these would help to prevent snow drifts on the roads, and these could be permanent or temporary. The temporary ones were actually cheaper, so they were often preferred. The roads could also be constructed in a way to minimize the buildup of snow. On the eastern part of the state in the plains, there was a push to construct roads 1 to 3 feet above the surface of the ground so that to prevent snow buildup. Elsewhere, as on Tennessee Pass that you can see here, the roads were actually relocated and widened to ease snow removal and for various other reasons. And then in other areas, they had a careful study of proposed road locations to place them where drifts were at a minimum and exposure to the sun was at a maximum. But plowing the roads was still the most effective means for keeping the roads open during the winter. And various types of plows were used to clear the roads, and snow companies from as far away as Minnesota would advertise in the Department of Highways monthly journal with the various plows they had, and some even designed and built specialized plows that could function in the Rocky Mountains. So road graders were one type of plow that was used, and these were beneficial because most highway crews already owned this piece of equipment. They didn't really require any special skills, and they had low maintenance costs, but they were very slow and not as effective with packed snow. They also had the V-shaped plow that could be attached to a truck or a tractor, and this functioned better in heavier snow and could remove up to 1 foot of packed snow or 4 to 5 feet of loose snow. There was also the straight blade plow attached to a truck or a tractor, and this is obviously one of the more common types of plows, but it was used in areas with less snowfall, as it can only clear about 6 inches to 1.5 feet of snow depending on how compact it was. There was also the rotary plow, which was similar to the V-shaped plow in that it threw the snow from the roadway, but it had this rotating wheel with vanes that would throw the snow, and this would attach to a tractor and would draw its power to rotate from the tractor. And it could clear snow from as deep as 2 to 9 feet, so this was especially useful for the deep drifts in the mountains and for heavy snowfall. But in the early years of the department, everything was an experiment, and a variety of plows were tried and tested. And maintenance crews were really instrumental in testing and constructing the various types of plows and snow removal equipment. They would spend the winters just determining the best methods, the best time, and the best types of equipment to use. The plow in this photo was actually constructed by Patrolman Delbert Pollard. It's shown here on Road 13 north of Meeker, and this is about 1929. Another story I read about was a crew that constructed a 6-foot rotary snowplow, mostly by using surplus war materials from World War I. They kind of based their design on the railroad plows that were used on the Moffett Road, but they made it much smaller, but it could still clear drifts up to 6 feet in height. And one crew in Kremling, as you can see, even attached skis to their plow to make it easier for them. So there's all sorts of innovation going on, and a lot of credit is really due to these maintenance crews that work to keep the roads clear. They were out there, they were essential to keeping them open. They sometimes had to backpack into their locations, or they would live in residences that were near the top of the passes just to make sure that these could be kept clear and open. They were exposed to the elements, as you can imagine. They were injured a lot. In 1928, it was reported that some men were temporarily blinded by snow removal in the Southwest. Others had blistered hands and faces. Frostbite, as you can imagine, was pretty common. But with the help of these really dedicated crews, snow removal at the department had some early successes. So in May of 1924, Berthoud Pass opened a month and a half earlier than in previous years. And this was thanks to the rotary snowplow that maintenance crews had built and the 8 tons of dynamite that was used to break through the ice. At the time, the department called the achievement, quote, the most stupendous undertaking ever attempted by road officials in the Western country. And they gave special credit to the 13 equipment operators who, quote, never faltered on the job, and namely the superintendent of the division, Charles Brock. And like I said, experimentation was key. Another story was on Fall River Road in Rocky Mountain National Park. The maintenance crews in November laid a tube of TNT along the road with the intent of detonating it in the spring to clear the roads. I never found follow-up to that, but it presumably didn't work because the following year the park purchased a 20B Bucyrus steam shovel, which helped clear the road and eliminated the need for a shovel team. And here's some photos of that here. But as the winter maintenance improved, the demand for more convenient travel grew, as you can expect. So at this time, there was still no statewide program for snow removal. The state was collaborating with counties on snow removal and contributing roughly 50% of their funds to that end, but it differed from county to county. So in December of 1925, AAA launched a concerted effort to make snow removal on major highways mandatory for states. The organization lobbied to get laws passed to this effect, and the end goal was obviously to better facilitate winter transport along the country's primary road systems. So this map is from the winter of 1925 to 26, and it shows that presumably Colorado fared better than most states with this, because you can see all the dark lines indicate roads that were cleared during the winter, and Colorado seems to have a lot more than the surrounding states. So I think the department really took that lobby effort to heart. So progress towards winter road maintenance really continued throughout the late 1920s. Snow removal crews covered more than 500 miles of highway throughout the state in 1927. In 1929, they managed to keep the main mountain passes and federal aid highways open for the first time at a cost of $50,000. These open roads included the Platte River Highway from Julesburg to Greeley, the North-South Road, which roughly followed I-25, Tennessee, Raton, and Levita passes, and many other main roads. But with the coming of the Depression in the 1930s, roadwork in general became a way to employ thousands of unemployed workers, and snow removal could be a part of this work. And also, work relief programs such as the Civilian Conservation Corps sometimes aided in the clearing of roads. But despite the Depression, the Department of Highways actually purchased 20 new snowplows in the fall of 1931 in preparation for the upcoming winter. And the journals from that year report that they were already lamenting the ways of the past when, mountain passes were closed and snow removal just didn't happen. They already recognized how important this was to Colorado's economy. But the equipment they had and no matter how many people they had, it was still no match for Colorado. These photos show crews working for days on a slide on Red Mountain Pass in March of 1932. And as you can see here on the right, they did manage to open the road, but then 4 days later it was covered again by another slide. So, you know, it's no matter how much equipment you have, it's still, you're fighting nature, you're fighting the elements. But following World War II, Colorado's economy and tourism industry flourished, and the population of the state grew from 1.1 million in 1940 to 1.7 million in 1960. And this growth brought a renewed interest in travel and recreation. And the connection between Colorado's economic development and transportation system became even more apparent. In particular, Colorado's ski industry experienced explosive growth in the 1960s. There were new resorts such as Breckenridge in '61, Vail in '62, and Keystone in 1970. This put more pressure on the road system. And this increase in winter travel not only brought to light the immediate hazards of the roadways, but it also increased danger due to avalanche slides. So no avalanche control or mitigation occurred in the early years of the department up to the 1940s. But with fewer people on the road during those times, there was less of a chance for these avalanches to really impact people. But the avalanche danger came to a head in 1948 when Highway Department employee Adam Frazier was killed by an avalanche in the Severn Sisters slide area on Loveland Pass. After this fatality and others involving the traveling public, the Highway Department began exploring different methods for avalanche control. They initiated Operation Breakup in 1950, which was a study of major slide areas in the state. They gathered data on snow depth, on humidity, on wind velocity and weather and various other things. But ultimately, they knew that they needed new strategies to keep the roads clear and to keep motorists safe. So now Ray's going to get up here and talk to you about the avalanche program.
So, as Lauren said, my name is Ray Mumford, and I've been doing the avalanche control work for the Highway Department since 1975. I've lived and worked up here in Summit counties since 1973. But the Forest Service was the first to conduct avalanche control for the Highway Department. But it was very limited. They just climbed to the top of a start zone where they could and just throw sticks of dynamite into the start zone. This picture was taken up on Loveland Pass in 1950. You can see the Forest Service team up on the ridgeline right there. They said they were just getting ready to throw a stick of dynamite into that start zone when the avalanche released on its own. That truck down below is a Coors truck. They said he talked his way past the roadblock so he could continue his route. Now, back in 1950, I'm sure we can all imagine how that Coors truck driver talked his way past that roadblock. But that's another story for another time. But that avalanche did miss him, and he continued on up the hill. In the mid-1950s, the Army issued the Highway Department 2 75-millimeter pack howitzers to be used for avalanche control. These were very effective little weapons, and we used them for over 30 years before we finally ran out of bullets and had to turn them back in. But there was no avalanche forecasting. No one knew when it was when the best time to conduct avalanche control for the best results, and no one knew when it was time to close the road because of the avalanche hazard. So the fatalities continued to mount. In 1957, Highway Department worker Wayne Whitlock and Walt Disney photographer John Herman were killed by an avalanche on Berthoud Pass. Mr. Herman had asked if he could film an avalanche coming down, and all the longtime locals said that this avalanche right there, there's no way that avalanche would ever reach the highway. So both men set up the camera on the highway and continued filming this avalanche until it reached the reached the highway. That happened in 1957. That was the last time it hit the highway until 3 weeks ago. And I'll be saying that a few more times in this presentation. But this is a photographer's card. It's in the debris. The management at the Highway Department said it was just a freak accident and no changes were made. In 1963, The Reverend Marvin Hudson and his 2 daughters were killed in an avalanche on Red Mountain Pass. Again, they said it was just a freak act of nature and no changes were made. In 1970, Robert Miller was killed when an avalanche hit this dozer that he was operating on Red Mountain Pass. They said it was a hazard of the job and no changes were made. In 1978, Terry Kishwell was killed when an avalanche hit the snowboarder he was operating. And again, hazard of the job, they said. But the towns of Silverton and Uray insisted that an avalanche shed be built underneath the East Riverside avalanche path to protect the workers and the users on that stretch of highway. And that was done in 1979. And in March of 1992, CDOT worker Eddie Emil was killed and Danny Harmilo narrowly escaped death in an avalanche on Red Mountain Pass. As a result of this tragedy, the CDOT Transportation Commission mandated that a complete avalanche management plan be put together. This included partnering with the Colorado Avalanche Information Center to provide avalanche forecasters to work with CDOT to forecast the avalanche hazard along the highways in Colorado. The second part of the plan is to teach avalanche safety to all CDOT maintenance workers that were assigned to avalanche-prone areas. This training included the use of the avalanche rescue transceiver, procedures of clearing avalanche debris from the roadway, recognizing snow conditions that could lead to an avalanche, and CDOT's rescue procedures. At the same time, CDOT upgraded its avalanche control program by acquiring avalanche control weapons that would be the most effective for the different avalanche paths. The avalanche forecasters would recommend control work for certain avalanche paths, and the CDOT crews would schedule control work using the device that would be the most effective. Now, when we talk about the evolution of CDOT's avalanche control devices, we have to start with the Avalauncher. It's a device that is made especially for avalanche control. It launches a projectile to the avalanche start zone using nitrogen pressure. Now, the first experimental avalaunchers were very crude devices that were neither safe nor effective. But the first commercial avalauncher, the old tray loader avalauncher, proved to be very effective. And after over 40 years, these old tray loaders are still being used by some DOTs and ski areas across the country. This avalanche here was triggered by an old tray loader avalauncher in the southern part of the state. And one of the key elements for a successful avalanche control mission is knowing where to park your car. In 1988, CDOT acquired 2 McCracken launchers, and in 1993 purchased 6 more, and they're deployed across the state. The McCracken launcher has a much longer range and is more user-friendly than its predecessor, the Avalauncher. This is the McCracken launcher here. That longer barrel increased the accuracy of the gun, and then the increased nitrogen capacity gave it a much longer range. But in March of 2014, an Avalauncher round detonated in the chamber of an Avalauncher, critically injuring 2 of the CDOT's avalanche control team members. This led to many changes within CDOT's avalanche control program. We started using the Delta K Avalauncher round. It has many more safety features incorporated in this round than what the old AVR classic rounds had. The crews now get behind blast shields when they're firing the Avalauncher, whether it's a permanent shield behind these concrete blocks or the portable blast shields that are pulled to the different avalanche sites across the state. We have 11 of these blast shields deployed across the state. This next video was an avalanche that was triggered by a McCracken launcher just west of the tunnel a couple of miles just 2 years ago.
Like a broken way up line.
This'll get the road.
I think that's going to clean it all out, guys.
Since the mid-1950s, the U.S. military has provided certain surplus weapons, ammunition, and support to the avalanche control programs in the United States. Users of these weapons are required to follow very strict procedures set by the military. The military also requires in-depth training at all crew positions and on the maintenance of these weapons. When we ran out of ammunition for the 75mm pack howitzer, the Army took those guns back and issued two 105mm recoilless rifles in the mid-1980s. This is the 105 recoilless here. Now, half the propellant is vented out the back of the gun, and the other half of the propellant launches the projectile downrange. That equalized the pressure in the gun, so there's no recoil, so it could be fired from the bed of a pickup truck, and it made it very effective for our mobile operations. This is the round that was used from the recoilless. It was an anti-personnel round. It detonated on impact. It had a very thick metal jacket that threw a lot of shrapnel, and then of course the holes in the cartridge was the recoilless part of it, where half the propellant was vented out the back of the gun. Now this next video is we were happened up at a Arapahoe Basin ski area. We had a 105 recoilless mounted up on a tower up there where we shot across the valley to two large avalanche paths. And ESPN was up there filming this event, or filming an event up there, and they came along and filmed us doing the control work. And this is my 1.5 seconds of fame.
They call it the Continental Divide, and it feels like you're at the top of the world. More specifically, here in Colorado, this is Loveland Pass, where blowing snow and howling winds are interrupted only by the sounds of avalanche cannons. Clearing the trails for the Bud Mogul Tour.
When the 106, or when we ran out of ammunition for the 105 recoilless, the military converted the avalanche programs over to the 106 recoilless. We thought this was going to be the future of CDOT's avalanche control program for years to come. We acquired 14 of these guns and several thousand rounds of ammunition. This is the 106 recoilless here. It was a much more compact gun. With that shorter barrel, though, that the muzzle blast played havoc on the windshield of our gun trucks. There were many times that we'd have to drive back to our shops with a shattered windshield or without any windshield at all. We finally found it by strapping a mattress across the top of or across that windshield, cushioned that blast enough to protect that windshield. This is the round being fired here. You can see the projectile in flight there. It was a very violent weapon. The noise level was measured at over 190 decibels when this gun was fired, compared to about 115 decibels with the 105 howitzer that we use today. And with that backblast from the propellant being vented out the back of the gun from the recoilless part, you're just as dead behind the thing as you are in front of it. And this is the round. It was an anti-armor round. It was a very thin metal jacket, but it had twice the explosives in that warhead. It was an anti-armor round where the fuse was located in the base of this round. It was designed to partially penetrate the side of an armored vehicle before detonating. But with that fuse located in the base of that round next to all that fire, if there was any flaw in that ammunition, it led to some deadly consequences. We only used this gun for 2 years. In the winter of 1994, a round detonated in the barrel of a 106 recoilless being fired by an avalanche control team at the Alpine Meadow ski area in California. The accident killed one of the team members and seriously injured the rest of the crew. The military determined that there was a flaw in the ammunition and it could occur again, but they said you could continue using it if you were behind a thick concrete barrier. Well, this just wasn't practical for CDOT's mobile operations, so we discontinued the use of this, and for 3 years we relied solely on the helicopter to control the large avalanche paths across the state. 5 years after that fatality, another round detonated in a 106 recoilless at Mammoth Mountain ski area in California, And exactly a week later, another round did the same thing at Mammoth Mountain, and that was enough for the military, for the Army. They ordered all the guns to be returned back to the Army, and just to quit using them from that point on. After a 3-year period without the use of artillery weapons for avalanche control, CDOT finally acquired the 105 millimeter howitzer. These are very stable weapons. Hundreds of thousands of rounds have been fired by the military without incident. It incorporates an indirect targeting system that, if it's set up right, will hit the same spot on the mountain every time without even seeing the mountain. And this is very critical. These guns have a range of just a little bit over 7 miles. So you want to make sure you're going to hit the side of that mountain. So we go through a series of calculations to make sure we can get that 40-pound bullet to hit where we want it to hit it on that side of the mountain. And that you can adjust the range on these guns by pulling different powder bags out of the cartridge to either make it a longer range or a shorter range. And this next video here was over on Red Mountain Pass, on the north side of Red Mountain Pass, firing out the West Riverside avalanche area. The gun has to lob the shell over one ridge and drop into the avalanche path on the other side. The crews can't even see the avalanche at all. And but through all those calculations and the indirect targeting, they know they're going to hit that same spot on the mountain every time. And this is a video here. But you can see how steep the elevation is.
I apologize, this one does not want to work.
Anyway, you can see just how steep of an angle that gun is, where it lobs over one ridge and drops right over on the other side where the crews don't even see the avalanche path. And this next video was on the other side of Red Mountain Pass. It was triggered by a 105 howitzer, and I'll hope that will play here. Yeah, here it comes. But this is a big avalanche. You can see how fast it's moving. It crossed the road twice, and then went up the slope on the other side. Now, I had to edit the sound out of this because the language of the gun crew got pretty colorful while they were watching that thing come down. One negative aspect of any explosive, especially any projectile, is the potential of the round not detonating. The unexploded ordnance is a major concern to both the crew that have to locate it and destroy them, and the unsuspected hiker in the summertime. Every summer, a thorough search is conducted in any path that had a round that failed to detonate. This is a Delta K round that was found on Coalbank Pass over on 550 in the southern mountains just last year. And this round was found when they were doing the Gazex installation on the Seven Sisters area on Loveland Pass. It's an old 75 millimeter pack howitzer round. It was buried underneath about 8 inches of dirt. It was estimated it laid up there for over 40 years before it was finally found. The CDOT UXO teams safely detonated this round, and the work continued on the installation. Now, this next video is of destroying of a military UXO, and you'll be able to hear the shrapnel flying through the air when the detonation occurs.
10-4, stand by for fire in the hole in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1, fire in the hole, fire in the hole.
In the interest of reducing the amount of avalanche rounds fired, we've started using the case charges. And this entails placing a large charge on the snowbank across from the avalanche area. It's very effective on the cut banks along the road or the smaller avalanche paths. But when that charge detonates, and that compression wave going across that snowpack, putting pressure on that snowpack, if there's any weakness in there, it's going to fail and will avalanche. This is one of the larger case charges here that's used over on Vail Pass and on Grand Mesa. This is a 60-pound charge right here. And this next video shows of driving through the debris on Grand Mesa that the case charge is released. Now, in the interest of saving time, I had to cut this video in half, but you can imagine just driving twice as far through this, and this is what 5 case charges, how much snow the 5 case charges put on the highway. And if using an avalancher, it would have taken between 20 and 25 rounds to achieve the same results. Each avalancher round costs about $200, where a case charge like this costs between $40 and $45, so it's a big savings.
Number 1, 13, and what, probably 100 feet. Number 2, same thing, 120 feet.
Now, avalanche control work with the helicopter is primarily used after a major storm cycle or when there are highway closures that requires control work on many avalanche paths over a large area in a short amount of time. This is the helicopter that is used up in the northern part of the state. The advantage of using a helicopter, of course, is you can put big charges right at the very ridgeline where you wouldn't dare take that shot with the artillery. But the disadvantage is if the wind is blowing too much, or if you have snow where you don't have visibility, you cannot fly that helicopter. And so that leads to some very tough decisions that the avalanche forecasters and the highway supervisors have to make. Do they keep that road closed, waiting for the weather to clear to get the helicopter in the air? Or do you take a chance and open the road and put traffic underneath these avalanche paths and waiting for that helicopter to fly? So it's some tough decisions to be made. Now, there's some great avalanche videos that are out there, and then there are AC/DC avalanche videos. This is on Red Mountain Pass, and this was triggered by a helicopter. The Gazek system uses a mixture of oxygen and propane that is injected into a large tube that is turned downward toward the snowpack. When the mixture is ignited, it applies pressure on the snowpack that is equal between 30 and 45 pounds of TNT detonating on the surface of the snowpack. This is the Gazek installation on Berthoud Pass on the Stanley Avalanche path. And then this next video is of the Gazek mixture igniting in the Gazek's tube on Loveland Pass in the Seven Sisters area and the resulting avalanche.
You got a good one there.
Passive avalanche control methods is the use of structures to reduce the avalanche hazard. In Europe, it's a big deal. They put snow fences everywhere just to hold the snowpack in place up there, prevent the snow from coming down onto the highways or the railroads or the towns that might be underneath. They put big walls to protect infrastructure that might be on the other side. Here in Colorado, one of the first passive control installations was on Mount Bethel, just a couple miles east of the Eisenhower Tunnel along I-70. This wind drift fence was built in the 1957 by the Army Corps of Engineers. Now it's pretty obvious that the Corps of Engineers back in 1957 didn't know a whole lot about building a snow fence to reduce the avalanche hazard. I'm sure if they would do it now, they would extend it further up the mountain and to bring them further down the slope too. You can still see where the wind is sweeping that snow into that avalanche start zone. Further down the avalanche path they built two berms when they were building Interstate 70 back in the 1960s. The upper berm is designed to take the energy out of the avalanche and to change the flow of that avalanche. And you can see it coming down here, and it's hitting the berm right there, and it looks like it's going right over the top of that berm and headed down to I-70. But when the dust settled, you can see what happened. It changed the flow. It turned a lot of that debris away from Interstate 70, and it does a good job for the first couple of times until those berms get full, and then it has to come down to the interstate. And that's where the big berm is built. And it's designed to hold or to stop the avalanche right there. And here I go again. The last time it hit the road prior to three weeks ago, it buried the road. But the only other time it hit the road was 33 years ago. But now, like I say, I'm going to be saying that quite a bit. But for the most part, that big berm there stops that debris from hitting the road. But we still have the powder cloud, the problem of the powder cloud coming across that highway. This was taken a couple of years ago. Now the traffic was all but stopped because of a problem that was further up the highway. But when this avalanche came down, there was no debris got put on the highway, just that powder cloud. But you could imagine on a Saturday morning, about 9 o'clock, when traffic was moving at 60, 70 miles an hour, just what kind of havoc that would raise. So that powder cloud is still a big concern to us. Down on Wolf Creek Pass, they built snow mounds to take the energy out of the avalanche to lessen the impact on Highway 160 on Wolf Creek Pass. In the old days, they would just dig tunnels underneath the avalanche debris so people could continue going about their business. But now we have the snow sheds. And this is the snow shed underneath the East Riverside Avalanche Path on Red Mountain Pass. Now, when they were building this, all the avalanche experts said it was too short. It had to be longer. But the Highway Department only had so much money, and they knew they had to do something with the, underneath the East Riverside Avalanche Path because 5 people had already died there. So they went ahead and built this snow shed. This is the East Riverside Avalanche here, and that's that little bitty snow shed right down there. A little closer up of it there's the snow shed there. This black spot over there to the left is the exhaust from the snowblower that Eddie Emil and Danny Hermile were working on when they got buried and killing Eddie, less than 100 feet outside of that snow shed. This is the East Riverside Avalanche running here. Now the State Patrol has clocked this at over 100 miles an hour when it comes down and hits this snow shed. So it's a big, dangerous avalanche when it does come down. And we have another snow shed that's over on Wolf Creek Pass. It's an older snow shed. It was built in the 1960s, right in 1960, after 3 truck drivers were killed by an avalanche on the Alberta's Cousin Avalanche Path. But it still does its job. You can see where the debris still goes over the top of this snow shed. And the future, pretty much the future is now. We started building the Ovalex. We just finished up an installation on the west side of Berthoud Pass and also on the east side of the west side of the Eisenhower Tunnel. These are similar to the GasX, where it's a mixture of gases. It's inserted in a tube and then it's ignited, releasing that blast that puts pressure on the snowpack. This, instead of propane and oxygen, it fires hydrogen and oxygen just to lessen the weight of this. These are filled with the gas and flown up to the avalanche start zone in the fall and placed on stands up there. and then it's fired throughout the winter. It's very effective on some of the smaller avalanche paths and some of the where it doesn't require a lot of control work. Diesel has about 20 shots in each one of these eggs, and then in the spring they're flown back down where the crews can do maintenance on them and fill them for the gas, and then flown back up in the fall. We are also looking into doing installations of snow fencing in some avalanche paths across the state. This is, it just holds the snow in place, prevents it from coming down on the highway. So when the avalanche crews are planning a mission, these areas could be taken out of the equation as far as making plans for a control mission. It also helps in revegetating the area. And the more trees that are up in there, it also helps in anchoring that snowpack in place up there. The CATEX system is a tram system that will deliver explosives to pre-designated spots on the mountain. When it gets to those spots, it will lower the charge down to just above the surface of the snowpack, and then detonating. That air blast above that snowpack is the most effective way of doing the avalanche control. It can fire 20 of these shots at the different spots across the mountain at one time. And the Avalanche Guard, we're going to be doing an installation with the Avalanche Guard next summer on the west side of Loveland Pass. Inside these boxes houses explosive charges that is lobbed into the avalanche start zone and then detonating into the avalanche start zone. And the Wiesen Tower. We're going to do an installation there next summer on the Lizard Head Pass. It will lower a large charge down from that fixture up on top down to just above the surface and then detonating. Now, in an effort to reduce the impact avalanche control has on the traffic flow, CDOT is beginning to conduct control work on certain avalanche paths at night. We've started doing this with the GASX and Obelix systems, and we're going to be evolving into the other control systems as time goes on. This is the Obelix system being fired at night on the west side of Berthoud Pass. And now we also are using thermal imaging binoculars and cameras. It's a heat detecting instrument to help determine if there might be any people or animals in the avalanche start zone when we do our control work at night. And it can also confirm if an avalanche was released when the shot was fired at nighttime. And that way it helps us determine, is it safe for the avalanche or for the debris removal crews to move in there and start doing their cleanup when we know just how much of that avalanche had run. So this next video will show us scanning the area, looking for any people or animals that might be up in the avalanche start zone. You can see, you can be able to see a person that's up there, an animal. You can even see where the wind is blowing up on the ridgeline up there. And then it can also detect an avalanche that occurred, and this next video will show that. And you can see where the fracture line was from the avalanche. And it's amazing just how, with that moving snow, how much friction is generated in that moving snow and how much heat is generated in that moving snow. It's pretty fascinating. Pretty cool, huh? The last and most important piece of the CDOT Avalanche program are the people that do the work. This includes the avalanche forecasters, the gun crews, the equipment operators, and the traffic control personnel. These highly trained people work long hours under harsh and dangerous conditions in addition to their regular duties. They are the ones that make it work. Now, prior to 1992, 23 people had been killed by avalanches on the highways here in Colorado. After 1992, when CDOT and the Colorado Avalanche Information Center combined forces, not one person has lost their life to an avalanche on the highways here in Colorado. But we can't take these avalanches for granted. We learned that here 3 weeks ago. there's still these avalanches are still killers out there, and we always have to keep our guard up when we're out there traveling on these highways. This presentation is dedicated to the 5 CDOT workers who lost their lives in the line of duty by avalanches on Colorado highways. Adam Frazier, Wayne Whitlock, Robert Miller, Terry Kishbaugh, and Eddie Email. We do not want to add any more names to this list. So that's all I have. Thank you. And we'll be happy to answer any questions if you might have them too. Yes.
So how do you do the forecasting of where the avalanches may occur? And had anybody expected the avalanches, the two that we just had between Copper and Frisco, had anybody anticipated those?
Well, the forecasting is done by the avalanche forecasters, and they track the snowpack from the very beginning, from the first storm of the season. They start watching that snowpack and how it degrades through the winter. You know, the Colorado snowpack is among, known in avalanche circles as among the most dangerous in the country, and this winter is classic for that, where we get these shallow snowstorms, you know, every few days, and then real cold weather in between, and that breaks down that snowpack and puts very unweak layers in that snowpack. And then this time of the year, that's when these big heavy wet storms come and put all that weight on the snowpack, and this was an extreme of that because the weather, it was so wet, the storms were so heavy, put all that weight. What happened in 10 Mile Canyon, yes, we've seen avalanches there, but again, the last time an avalanche hit the road there was back in 1986. And up until then, so, you know, when we started hearing about the powder clouds, you know, yeah, our antennas started going up, you know, and then all of a sudden, then that one car, the snow hit the road, that one car got swept, pushed over. Luckily, nobody was hurt on that, but then that's what really, but you know, it's such a tough decision to make to shut I-70 down. It could have been, well, it was 3 days before we could get a helicopter in the air. So real tough, you know. Luckily nobody was hurt, but the powder clouds, it used to be you'd think, oh, it's just a powder cloud, but a powder cloud on I-70 is a serious thing. And so that's why they brought the helicopter in and shut the interstate down to get all that taken care of.
What do the ski areas use to do avalanche control?
They have avalanchers. There's a couple of ski areas have the big howitzers. They have the avalanchers. They do a lot of passive control, a lot of snow fencing to kind of direct the snow where they want it to be. You know, the ski areas, they want to keep the snow on the slope. We want to get the snow off the slope. But so they have a different way of methods, but they, you know, the ski patrollers will ski down the slope, throwing hand charges as they go down in these paths just to get that snowpack stabilized, you know, especially during big events like this.
Then how come they missed the whale's tail cornice there when the two guys got buried to their little swept How did they miss that one?
You know, when you're dealing with nature, sometimes nature wins. You know, it's just,
they were lucky.
they're very lucky. I mean, and half the time doing this is, I mean, you're relying on luck sometimes too. You know, you hate to say it, but you are. So.
Have you ever been in a serious avalanche yourself?
Yeah, there's a few times working Loveland Pass. Was in a snowblower, and an avalanche came down. It completely buried me. But you know, with the snow, it didn't push me off the road. So I was with a snowblower. You just kind of work your way out of it, you know. but you know, when that happens, you think the whole mountain's coming down on you, and it'll wake you up.
So 550 is open now?
550 open Saturday morning. Yeah.
This Saturday morning?
Just this past Saturday, yeah. They sent me some pictures. I wish we could have upgraded our program, because it's pretty impressive down there, what happened down there. And just like a Copper Mountain, and down there, some of those avalanche paths have never reached the road before. You know, so it was amazing what this storm did.
There's got to be an awful lot of debris that comes down with that as well.
Yep. there's a lot of debris that came down. You know, some of these areas, Twin Lakes, just above Twin Lakes going up Independence Pass, there was a natural avalanche that came down there, and it cleared out old growth timber, and the Avalanche Center said that some of those trees were 500-year-old trees. So you know, a lot of timber. You know, there's going to be some nice firewood here. Pardon me? And Peak One that's a great example of what happened there. Yeah.
The roads that are closed in the winter, like Trail Ridge and Independence Pass, when do you start clearing those? Is there a certain time of the year you begin clearing?
They'll start
continuously.
1st of May. They'll start on Independence, and it's pretty much the same on Trail Ridge too. Shortly after the 1st of May, on Independence they'll go up, get a helicopter up there, do the avalanche control to make it safe for the crews, and then the crews will go to work up there.
You try to clear those by Memorial Day, right?
Right, by Memorial Day. That's always their goal. And the same way with Mount Evans too.
Yeah, is that a CDOT, is that a state road, Mount Evans?
Mount Evans it's the road itself, the asphalt is CDOT, and the rest is all Forest Service. So CDOT, it's still their responsibility to get that road open.
How did they recover that footage from the first video?
You know, I don't know. You know, when I first started searching for this, it was still just in the newsreel can, and they converted it digitally, and the Avalanche Center did it for us.
Okay.
But yeah, it was a project.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's amazing just how good that film was, considered what it went through. So.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I mean, I wonder at what point the guys were like, all right, let's try to get it out of here. At what point did they start getting really scared?
Yeah, I don't. You know, it's hard to say. They said that their bodies were found still pretty much where they were standing. They got pushed up the slope, of course, but yeah. Yeah. So.
Does CDOT organize its resources and budget for different counties differently? I'd imagine Summit County, you know, you mentioned all the different resources that you guys have, but I'd imagine Summit has a lot more dangerous avalanche terrain relative to the highway. How does that work?
Yeah, and you're exactly right. The resources is, you know, with Interstate 70, it's expensive to keep these roads open up here, including the avalanche control. And we're going to the automated, you know, remote controlled avalanche systems just to make it more efficient. It's a quicker control, where the howitzer would take us a couple of hours to get these guns up and ready to go, where the remote control systems, it's just to push a button on a computer. So it's much quicker, and we can do it at nighttime. But that's one of the, you know, with up here, down on Red Mountain Pass, you know, down there they have several hundred avalanche paths that crosses the road from Ouray to Silverton on that pass. But and so it's a very active. You know, we have 60 people that do avalanche control. That's dedicated avalanche control team members in the state in the wintertime, in addition to their regular duties of snow plowing and equipment operating. So. All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.